Welcome everybody. My name is Bob Hollis with the Mobius Network, and I'll be providing some hosting and technical support for the webinar today. We'll be holding questions until the end. However, the best time to enter a question is as you think of it while the panelist is speaking. To do so, look in your GoToWebinar control panel and you'll see a box there for questions. In that question box, you can enter questions as they come to mind. And then towards the end, Christine Flowers with the HHW TC will be reading those questions out to the panelists so that they can answer them for the audience. We have a large number of people on today, which is fantastic. But in order to control background noise, everybody is on mute by default. However, we do actively encourage questions and ask for your participation to help us grow this program. If your GoToWebinar panel seems to have disappeared, look for a little orange tab with a white arrow along the edge. It's probably just closed. And if the whole screen seems to be closed, it's probably because you have another window in front of it. In that case, just look for the GoToWebinar icon in your taskbar tray and click that to bring it back to the front. And with that, I will be switching over to our first panelist, who is Alana. And she can tell you a little bit about her background and take it from there. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Alana Rivadeneira. I'm with the City of San Jose, and I'm the chair of the CRRA HHW Technical Council. I want to thank you for joining us today to view the Technical Council's spring webinar on gas cylinders. We're about to get started. And as Bob mentioned, please submit your question and comments, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. So a bit about the HHW Technical Council. We're one of many technical councils, part of the California Resource Recovery Association. The goals of this council are to provide a forum for universal and household hazardous waste prevention, management, extended producer responsibility, and share resources with one another. Participation in the Technical Council is open to CRRA members as well as non-members. Please visit www.hhwtc.org for more information on the Technical Council, joining CRRA, as well as some great resources for fellow professionals in this field. If you're interested in being involved in the Technical Council, there's a contact info fill-in sheet on the website, and the executive committee who are on this webinar would love to work with you. So today's panel, we have some great speakers today. We have Karen Gissable with the City of Sunnyvale, California, here in Santa Clara County, who will be discussing issues associated with gas cylinder disposal. Christine Flowers with the California Product Stewardship Association will give an overview of the Refuel Your Fun campaign, promoting refillable gas cylinders. And lastly, we'll have Josh Simpson from Camps Propane, Pickup Propane, offering a business perspective on this topic, helping retailers find solutions. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Karen.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much, Alana and CRA, for hosting us this morning to talk about a very exciting topic. I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay.
You should see a pop-up asking if you're ready to show your screen.
Okay, I see my screen. Sorry, technical difficulties. Not sure how to make this full screen.
Just go into View in your menu there for PDF. Great. And
I can't do it.
It's looking good. It looks good right now. And for anyone in the audience, okay, you can also adjust your screen size by looking at the top left corner of the display where it says Zoom. and you can change the percentage of your screen that takes up. So we're looking good.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so I'm Karen Gisel. I'm the Environmental Programs Manager with the City of Sunnyvale, and we're really excited to be talking about refillable gas cylinders. It's been an issue with us here in Sunnyvale because we operate a transfer station. And let's see, can we go to the next slide? I can't seem to. There we go. Okay. So the Sunnyvale Smart Station is what we're called, is the Sunnyvale Materials Recovery and Transfer Station. We have a partnership with the 3 nearby cities, Palo Alto, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale. We've been in partnership since 1994, and we get quite a bit of waste. We get about 175,000 tons annually. We've got 2 sorting lines. Our garbage line, where all the incoming waste gets sorted by hand and mechanically, and then we also have our curbside recycling line, and all that material is handled both manually and with equipment. We also do some floor sorting with our construction and demolition debris, and currently we're at about 25% diversion for the MRF side of things, and about 96% diversion for the recycling side of things. We've got about 70 sorters on site, so that's a lot of people handling a lot of material, as you can imagine. So that's why this really has popped up as a big issue for us. Next slide. So we've always tracked the number of cylinders, but it's really popped up. It popped up about 4 or 5 years ago because we're spending a lot of money disposing of them. But the number of cylinders that we got at the Smart Station was, when we started looking at it, was incredible. So I just tracked the last, 4 or 5 years, and you can see the increase over time, especially this last year. We've had a 33% increase from the previous year in the number of cylinders that we get. And we do get all kinds, as you can imagine, but the majority of them are the propane cylinders, so the single-use ones that get disposed. So of all those 9,000, you can see a huge number are the propane ones. Next slide, please. And like I said, the reason it really popped into our line of interest was because we couldn't find a local recycler, and so we were sending them to Texas actually to get recycled. And back in 2010, we spent $85,000 to dispose of them, and in 2011, $53,000. Fortunately, several years ago, we did find a local solution. There's a company in Loomis that will now take them for quite a reduced cost from what we're spending to ship them out of state. And they remove the gas, they cut them up and shred them, and they do get recycled. The larger tanks, the ones that you use for barbecues, those can actually be reconditioned, but the single-use ones cannot be reused or reconditioned. There's actually a state law. I think Christine's going to talk about that a little bit. Next slide, please. So for us, the cost is one thing, but the other issue is that they're incredibly dangerous. They come, obviously, across our sorting lines, both on the curbside line and the garbage line. People just don't know how to dispose of these single-use containers. In our city, and probably most cities, they can be brought to household hazardous waste events, but those only happen once a month sometimes, less frequently in other places. I believe Santa Cruz will accept them curbside. We have chosen not to do that because we don't know if there's gas in the cylinders or not, so we don't accept them, and so that's probably why they're coming in our front door. So obviously our sorters are exposed to them both coming across the line, and as they get baled if they accidentally end up in a pile of metal and the material gets baled, we've had explosions, and in fact in March we had a fire at our facility. Some type of cylinder, or it could have been some other material, like a paint can or something. We're not sure exactly what it was. Exploded in the bale. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but because of the explosion, a spark flew over to bales of paper, and caught fire. The fire department shows up, and we lose 40 bales of paper and about $1,800 in revenue. And obviously that doesn't account for the workers that are off for about 3 or 4 hours waiting for things to get mopped up. So very scary. And if you've ever heard one explode in a bale, it rocks. You know, my office is next door. It kind of rocks the facility, so it's pretty scary. Next slide. So, you know, in addition to what we get at the MRF, there's obviously other cylinders out there in the world. California parks and obviously national parks get thousands of these cylinders from campers using them in their stoves and their lights. Yosemite alone handled about 23,000 in 2014, and the parks are getting increased use, especially since the economic downturn, probably because people are finding camping is a less expensive way to get out there and see the world. And it seems as though the numbers of people using the parks is going up. I went online and found a statistic from just Yosemite alone. I guess in 2014, 3.8 million visitors came to the park, and from 2013 to 2014, they had an increase of 19,000 visitors from 2013 to 2014. So obviously people are out there, which is great, but that means more of these cylinders are being used. Next slide. And what that means, of course, is that the cylinders need to be handled. At Yosemite, they actually have a collection program. They have a special container next to the garbage containers where people can dispose of them. And then they actually have a volunteer program where the volunteers weigh the cylinders to see if there's gas in them. And if they don't have gas in them, they puncture them, which in my mind, I'm looking at this guy thinking, oh my gosh, I would not want to be the one hammering the nail into that cylinder. Apparently they haven't had any injuries, but it's really not the best approach to getting rid of the gas and dealing with those. But the empty ones do get recycled. Yellowstone also has a program, and they recycled 6 tons in 2013, so that's good that they are getting recycled. And then at Yosemite, they actually reused the ones that have partially filled with gas. They do send them over to their search and rescue team, which is there year-round, so they do use those up, so that's good. Next slide. And then there's other uses of cylinders, tailgating. People use them for their little camp stoves for tailgating. Plumbers and jewelers use the MAP gas ones, which you see on the right there. So those are, we also get quite a few of those, and those are, we find those disposed in the garbage just as well. So those folks don't necessarily know how to dispose of them either. And then I didn't actually think about this, but lawn and gardening equipment like blowers, mowers, and hedgers are now using these. If they want to go without the plug-in, they use the little gas cylinders there. So there's lots of places where they're being used. And then the last slide. And then something I didn't really know about until last week, there's sort of this emerging area safety issue with butane gas cylinders. And our Department of Toxic and Substance Control is reporting an increase in the number of explosions in abandoned cylinders stemming from the use of butane gas in what's called honey oil, the making of honey oil, which is extracting THC from marijuana. I did not know it. But they're just seeing an increase in the number of illegal labs and abandoned cylinders over time. Jurisdictions are reporting an increase in illegal disposal and also these showing up at their facilities. And it's not just in rural areas, it's all over California. And I've seen stories of houses exploding with these things, and there's just tons of them. People buy them by the caseload. So this is an emerging issue that should be addressed too. Last one. If anyone has any questions about any of that or what we're doing at our smart station, feel free to contact me, and I believe we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, next we have Christine Flowers with CPS for Refuel Your Fun campaign. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Bob, I need you to take control and show the presentation for me, for
Okay.
mine.
All right, give me just 1 second.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just give me just 1 second to get that up on my screen, and I'll take care of that.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm just having a little technical difficulty on my end with the computer, so I'll get Bob to pick that up and show my presentation. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today, and while he's pulling that up for us, we had over 80 people registered throughout the state of California and other states, including both state agencies and local governments. So thank you very much for picking up and participating in our webinar. And it's for us to share the information we have and also to generate a conversation and get information from you as well. So we do appreciate that. What I'm going to be going over today is our Refuel Your Fun campaign. And it is something that we've established through several grants here in California. And we will, as soon as we get that up, we will we'll show you our great campaign logo that we've developed through the process and explain what we're doing. And Karen has set the stage for the issues.
Are you seeing my screen,
Okay.
Christine?
Yep, great. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll mute myself and I'll listen for your cues.
Okay. So this is our campaign logo on the front, and as you can see, we have multiple local governments that are participating in this. This is funded by a grant from Cal Recycle through our HHW program. And so there are 5 local governments. CPSC is a statewide nonprofit that is a subcontractor to all of the local governments that are participating in this grant and campaign. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So with that, we've developed this. I'm the program manager for California Product Stewardship. And we are, again, a statewide nonprofit. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. What we'll cover today is who we are, what is a very brief slide on what is extended producer responsibility, and about the grant project, the problem, the solution, some information from Canada on propane gas cylinder recycling and some educational outreach, and then what you can do without even being in the grant project, what you can do to refuel your fund and join the campaign, and then also we've designed it and developed it so it can be utilized by others. And again, we're in early stages. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So our board of directors, we're a 501c3, 14-member board, 5 of which are private sector. We do have an open seat, so anyone in California who is interested can email our executive director, Heidi. And as you can see, our executive committee, the chair, vice chair, secretary, Lynn Francis with Chula Vista, the chair, Sean Bigley with Roseville, Patty Garbarino, is the secretary, and she's with Marin Sanitary Services, and Gretchen Olson is our treasurer. Go ahead to the next slide. To put this in perspective as to what we promote and work on as far as policy and implementing programs and transitional programs, product stewardship is the voluntary actions from producers and the product chain, and then extended producer responsibility is a smaller subset of that, which is ordinances or legislative mandates for product stewardship. So I just wanted to point that out. And go to the next slide. So we took, just to put this in perspective, each of the grants that we're working on, all of the 5 with our local government partners, which are the City of Sunnydale, and Karen was on that, the city, which is a regional project, the city of Elk Grove with the other cities and county in Sacramento. So they're both regional projects. Sunnyvale includes Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, and Mountain View. And then we have Santa Cruz County and the cities in Santa Cruz County are a regional project. The County of Mariposa and then the County of San Benito. Each of those grants has at least this part of the component, the Refuel Your Fund component, and then 3 of them also have additional outreach programs where we're working on retail battery collection and fluorescent lighting. So all of them have a similar project goal related to the disposables, which is to get residents, and we pulled this from the Sunnyvale grant, to switch from using disposable single-use 1-pound propane cylinders to refillable 1-pound propane cylinders, and to encourage retail locations to sell refillable 1-pound cylinders and provide the potential for refill or exchange. So they all have a similar goal. Go ahead into the next slide. Just kind of a retouch, which is already covered by Karen, but the problem with disposables, they're manufactured to be used once and thrown away. And when we look at that, there's 40 million sold in North America each year. We estimate over 4 million in California alone, and then we look at who is bearing the disposal costs. Example, the state parks are, the national parks and local governments. You can go to the next slide. Problem, they're costly. Karen has gone over, they're costly for local government, but they're also costly for the consumers. 80% of the cost is in the packaging, so 20% is for the gas. They're difficult and labor intensive to recycle, again, costly to local governments. We're using a number for maps. They work closely with some of the national parks. But if you look at the price point, that's showing you $5.95 new. So again, depending on where you purchase them, they can vary in cost. You can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we wanted to point out is we've seen an increase in the use of 1-pound propane gas cylinders. Sunnyvale has tracked the number, and you've seen their statistics. So as we've been getting into this project, we became aware of that there's been a change in fire code since 2007 and 2008, and they continue trying to make people aware of it. But for multifamily housing, propane units, cylinders of over 1 pound are banned, as well as charcoal. So they either have to use grills that are fueled by the small 1-pound cylinders or electric. So that is one thing that is, we believe, maybe driving the increased use in California. And then also, you've got the screenshot, the drought conditions are leading to the parks banning wood and charcoal fires. So we anticipate an uptick in the use of the 1-pound propane cylinders. So you can go to the next slide. So solution, refillables. There's a new type of cylinder in town, we like to say. They were not available widely, and they still are not available widely on the market. It's bringing it to the retailers and letting consumers know about them. But when we started this project and the grants were set out, as of July, there were none that we knew of being sold in retail in California of either type. This is showing you a variety of cylinders. There's mainly 2 manufacturers of the cylinders. That would be Flame King, which would be to the left of your screen. In the center is Manchester Tank. You can see they look slightly different in shape and with a different type of valve. And then the little camper to the right, which is a branded Flame King cylinder, and Josh Simpson, one of our other speakers, will be talking about their program, but they're a big, or providing input on how exchange works. They're a large partner with us in this grant-funded project. So you can go to the next slide. So let's look at the solution. Again, just some pictures to show you where they're used, where they can be used, tailgating. The Manchester Tank is really, they were designing those for the landscape and tool market. The little camper looks just like, in the Flame King design, they look in size just like the disposable ones that they're replacing. Go to the next slide. On cost savings, this is a graphic that we've come up with that can illustrate that over time, of course, the disposables, depending on the price point, and we're using the assumptions that the average cost is $4.99 for a disposable container, and if you use 10 cylinders a year over the lifetime of refillable, that is where we've made these assumptions. We do want to point out the price ranges for the disposables are anywhere from a 2-pack at a Walmart for $5 to over $7.99 in camping and convenience locations the closer you get to your outdoor space. And Josh can address questions at the end. The difference between a refillable and a disposable, the disposables are not rated for by Department of Transportation. They're not rated to be refilled. They cannot withstand the pressure changes, and they are not allowed to be refilled. There is a fine. We have information on our Cal PSC website about the different regulations, whereas the refillables have been designed and are rated by DOT for up to 12 years. So that's part of the difference in the cost of manufacturing. So let's go ahead to, I'd like to just point out that already after 5 uses in our cost comparison, is the cost of $19.99 is for the purchase of the refillable and the 3 exchanges, and then so by that time you're close to saving a great deal of money, and for campers or individuals who use a large number of these, over time there is cost savings on their side. This does not include cost savings of avoided disposal costs, etc., because they're generally, as a consumer, not bearing that cost. We can go to the next slide. So just some information from Canada. We're showcasing here the Ontario Orange Drop program. This is Orange Drop is their version of household hazardous waste collection programs. It provides residents with free, safe, and easy disposal. They accept 9 products, including propane cylinders. I'd like to point out it's fully funded by industry. Refillables are available in Canada, but they're not being utilized widespread. I spoke with the manufacturers. We do work closely, and we're in communications with the refillable manufacturers. So it's not widespread use there. So it still is mainly disposable. And so they have a special cage, and if we go on to the next slide, it will show what's going on for collection cages in their provincial parks. These cages are also used in some other areas, but they set the program up. Their provincial parks would be like our state parks for California. They're very large, and you can see the numbers were just skyrocketing, and disposal and being left behind. So they started the program, and numbers from 2011, over almost 225,000 pounds of 1-pound propane cylinders were collected. So they have 85 of the parks utilize the Orange Drop cages, and this is an opportunity for actually for producer responsibility and funding, and so they do fund this program. You can go to the next slide. We went online to the Ontario Parks and found some interesting information on how they're promoting green camping. And so it is in partnership with Coleman, which brands and has the market share for the majority of the disposable 1-pound cylinders. But if we've highlighted, it says consider using a refillable fuel canister. So we did not find any of this type of information on our state parks, and we will work to try to help get that messaging out to the state parks here in California. We just found that to be an interesting partnership there. So if you go to the next slide. So how can you refuel your fun? You can, as we're developing this campaign, and again, it's in our very early stages, you can and I'll go through some of the slides, but we'll go through the different things, like the Facebook page and follow, share stories of use and pictures, articles and newsletters, websites. Ask your local stores that sell disposables to offer or do refill exchange if they're already propane service providers or have an exchange program. Promote stores selling, and then ask retailers and product manufacturers that have devices fueled by the disposable propane cylinders to promote refillables. And we are working with, in these geographic regions of the grants, all the major retailers, trying to recruit them. It is a long process. We're working at a corporate level and at a local level with smaller stores. So it will take time. So we go to the next slide. Just an example of our Facebook presence, and we are starting to utilize this as we've started to get it to, we're going to be testing different marketing messages and Facebook page ads. The grant geographic region that is our test is the Elk Grove, Sacramento area. And we'll be targeting age groups 18 to 65, gender, different interests, camping outdoors, tailgating, and to see if we can, the goal is to increase the likes and increase the awareness of the disposable propane cylinders, the issue and the demand for refillable cylinders. So we'll be testing messaging and then share that and utilize it in the other geographic regions. So go to the next slide. We do have a website dedicated to this campaign, and you can take a look at that, refuelyourfun.org. And so we will be providing updates there and information. It's really geared for the public and where to find retailers, learn more, showcase the partners, etc. And again, at this point, with the limited number of retailers, we have lists of where they can be bought and also exchanged or refilled. We'll update that as we expand with a map, an interactive map. Go to the next slide. We there?
I've switched, there seems to be a slight delay. On my screen, I'm seeing the reduce, reuse, refuel your fund slide.
Okay. Okay, there we go. This is just a sample of some of the information. People are starting to use them. We've actually had earned media in a small newspaper, actually outside the grant area. A fisherman who does a weekly column has been using them and actually said in his article, I don't usually do this, but this is a great concept. We're using the local government outreach, print ads, and so through the grants we're trying to develop materials that can be customizable and utilized in each of the regions. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So that's one type of outreach. The other, in each of the geographic regions, this is an example of the coupon. We work with the various, this is for the Sacramento, Elk Grove, all the cities in Sacramento County. These are the locations currently that are selling them and offer propane exchange services or refill. So in this area, it was one free refill or exchange. And that price point, it varies. It can be $1.99 up to $2.25 to $2.99. It depends. And then the purchase of the first cylinder is anywhere from $10.99 to $14.99. So that shows you, and these are customizable for each of our grant areas. The one for Mariposa County, there's only one retailer in Mariposa, and they're offering $2 off the first purchase of a refill, or the first purchase of a refillable. Go ahead to the next slide. We have just some samples of, we're just starting to get out and do one-on-one outreach at public tabling and community events just this past month. It's very important, one of the lessons learned, very, very important to make sure that you show examples of the different apparatus that they can be used with. People are not familiar with what the 1-pound cylinders are called, so showing them a disposable and then a refillable is very important, and providing the coupons if they're interested. It drives them to the stores. So we find that very important. Through this, we're also developing partnerships. CSU Sacramento was one of our outreach events, and they have had their Peak Adventures, which is their outdoor student program that leads outdoor adventures, rents equipment. They are now going to be an official partner with us. And we're also going to be working with Stanford University and PSSI, which is their recycling company, to target tailgating events, because there are a large number used at tailgating events. So we're developing the partnerships through these outreach opportunities. You can go to the next slide. So one of the things we want to encourage, I don't like to put X's, but we thought this was appropriate. Scooters are being promoted to use, and they have, they're shown in sales and online with a disposable. So showing the scooters with a refillable 1-pound propane cylinder instead of a disposable would be great. One of the things that's happening in California because of our greenhouse gas reduction programs, we're seeing a shift from different fuel types to propane for different types of equipment. So we're going to see an increase in the use of propane because it's cleaner burning as far as greenhouse gas reduction options. Next slide. We just wanted to show you the variety of items that we're finding, lanterns, golf cart heaters, insect foggers, boat engines, weed torches, for those in the colder climates, ice drills, and then the chef's torch. All of these could be using refillable 1-pound propane cylinders. So that is where we're trying to, when we develop the campaign, we have to look at targeting the different consumer audience. It varies. The campers, tailgaters, chefs, homeowners, people who live in multifamily, landscapers, the list just goes on. Next slide. So how can you refuel your fun in our closing? Personally use refillables and be an agent of change. When we look at this, it doesn't just refer to the water bottles anymore. And getting that mindset to the consumer is going to be very important, and it is not going to happen overnight, but we think we have a great opportunity here. So next slide. And there's my contact information, again, all of our partners, and we couldn't do this without the resources that have been provided to the local governments by CalRecycle through the grant program. So that's the end for me. And if Bob, if you could keep going as with the presentations.
All righty, and who's up next, Christine?
Josh is up next, so if you could just go ahead and put his up for him. And then we'll have him unmute.
All right.
Here I am.
Hi, Josh. Give me just 1 second to switch presentations, and I'll be right back with you.
Take your time. I'm going to just take a quick moment to introduce myself. My name is Josh Simpson, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Camps Propane. We're a company based out of Manteca, California, with offices from San Diego up through Sacramento. And we also operate a division of our company called Pickup Propane, which is in the business of providing barbecue tank exchange for retail stores. And so we sell gas to people who dispense it. We also sell gas to people who just resell it already in cylinders, which are exchanged at retail locations. I'm going to go into some detail about why that will matter in the success of the Refuel Your Fun campaign, because at the end of the day, in order for this to succeed, the expansion of the distribution network across the retail footprint where people currently buy disposable 1-pound cylinders is the essential ingredient in making this work. So what I'm going to walk through is just a quick explanation of how the retail business marketplace sees the propane business, because I think what you're going to find is that when you're talking to people about how they should participate in this, it's essential to understand how the retailers see the different ways of selling propane and speak to them in a way that's consistent with what they understand and what they want to do. So I think we can skip the slide that we're looking at. It looks like it's not properly loading. I hope the others are going to go, but if you want to go ahead and jump to there we go. Okay, so first thing I want to point out is that if you look at the numbers, and this comes from an industry study of outdoor recreation use, so it's not really about propane and charcoal, it's really about how American consumers are choosing to cook when they're outdoors. What you can see is that back in about 1994, the number of propane barbecues passed the number of charcoal barbecues, and it's been significantly larger ever since then. At the end of the day, it's probably about convenience, because cooking with propane on a barbecue is just a lot easier. But the bottom line is that the marketplace has kind of chosen its favorite in this comparison, and that's why this is such a significant problem for our parks and for the HHW organizations, because there are a lot of these 1-pound disposable bottles being purchased, and that's not going to change. So let's go to the next slide. So when you look at dispensing propane, which is for some retailers the way that they want to sell gas, there are some really important differences between dispensing it, which means you have a large tank on your property, people bring you their empty tank, and you have an employee who takes the empty tank, attaches it to the dispenser, and pumps gas out of the large tank into the small tank. This is, without question, the most profitable way to participate in selling gas as a retailer. The real issue here is that if the retailer's determination is that the profit margin on selling gas is their most important motivating factor, then dispensing gas at their site is going to always be the most lucrative way to participate in the business. Having said that, there's a lot of reasons why people look at this and say, okay, wait a second, I'm not sure I want to do it. The first one is that it requires a permit for the installation of the propane tank and the dispenser. Just the cost of the permit causes some retailers to basically say, no, I don't want to do that. In addition to getting a permit, there is site preparation work. The dispenser requires infrastructure in terms of an electrical supply that will run the pump that gets attached to the tank, as well as crash posts that get built around the tank to protect it. That, again, upfront expense. A lot of retailers look at that and say, I don't really want to spend money to make money, therefore I don't want to do this. Really big issue comes down to liability. It is pretty infrequent that you have actual accidents associated with these dispenser systems. However, it is something that retailers take into account because you have not only the liability associated with an employee who is dispensing gas from one cylinder into another. When liquid propane is transferred, the hazard is that when it comes through that system, it comes through that system at a temperature of 44 degrees below zero. So anytime you have gas escaping from that system, the immediate danger is that when that gas touches the skin of the person who is either dispensing it or standing nearby, it will immediately freeze and burn their skin. So dispensing propane is dangerous. It's something that only trained personnel are allowed to do, and it's something that even when trained personnel are doing it, there are safety issues associated with it. We rarely have problems with this, but it's something that retailers have a heightened sensitivity to. The laws that relate to the transfer of propane do require that not only is there proper training of the employee who's going to do this, but it also has to be documented. So if you're a retailer and you have a turnover problem, which if you look at places like gas stations and convenience stores, turnover is a part of their life. Making sure that you constantly have people who are available to dispense the gas and who are adequately trained to do so creates a real bottleneck inside of the business, because if you spend the money to put the tank on your property, you want to be able to use it, because whenever you're selling gas, you're making a healthy profit margin on that gas. But the reality of it is that keeping the employees that you have trained to be able to maintain the operation of the system is time consuming, and in a lot of cases it's a problem that the retailers don't want to deal with. The last thing is that when you have one of these tanks that people use for their barbecues, those tanks are certified when they're manufactured for a 12-year lifespan. When somebody has a tank that has reached the end of its lifespan and they bring that tank into a reseller who has a dispenser, what happens as a result of that is that the person who is operating the dispenser has an obligation to deny that person a refill of their tank. For most of the people who do reselling with a dispenser, they don't actually sell cylinders. So if somebody comes in with a tank that is after its lifespan, the person who's selling the gas at that moment has to say, "I'm sorry, I can't do it. You're going to need to buy a new tank." It's a bottleneck for the resale dispenser operator that most of them don't want to get involved in the sale of tanks, and so they find themselves periodically essentially denying a customer the gas that they want to buy. The one thing I will tell you in addition to the profit margin is that we find from our customers who operate resale dispensers that they see the customers who are buying gas from them over and over and over again. And they tell us that it's an important part of building customer loyalty to their stores. So if you look at dispensing gas, there are a lot of reasons why retailers don't want to do it. The two reasons why they do are profit margin and because they like the relationship building aspect of offering gas for resale. So let's jump to the next slide and look at the exchange business. So when you look at the exchange business, this is where a company would install a secure locker on the property of the retailer. That secure locker is built to hold full tanks and empty tanks. When somebody shows up and they need gas, they bring their empty tank. You take the empty tank, you give them a full tank. There's a market rate cost for doing that. If you're the retailer, the reason why you don't want to do this is because if you look at the profit margin on the resale exchange business, the resale exchange business isn't anywhere near as lucrative. It's still an attractive business. It's just not as profitable. On the pro side, however, first of all, you have the convenience because you don't need trained personnel in order to do this. Anybody who can run a cash register in a store can participate in an exchange business because it literally just involves putting one tank in one locker and taking another tank out of another locker. There's not the safety training and that kind of complication involved. There is still permitting in most locations, we have to notify the local fire department or the local county that we're going to put one of these lockers on a location. They are subject to standards of where they can be located and how they have to be protected, but the permitting is much less expensive and much faster. The upfront expense, in most cases, is borne by the company that's providing the exchange, so it's not typically the case that the retailer has an out-of-pocket expense associated with becoming an exchange dealer. The liability associated with this is very low. There isn't any transfer of gas taking place on the property, and because the lockers are outdoors, even the possibility of like a leaky valve on a tank doesn't present anywhere near the liability associated with having a dispenser on your property. Training is really only about making sure that people understand what the standards are for tanks that are coming back, because if somebody shows up with a tank that's expired, you can still facilitate that process. It doesn't represent the barrier that you have on the dispenser side. However, what's important is for the employees to understand that they need to be able to look at that cylinder and understand what they're taking back. And then the last piece of it is that we were talking about with these tanks that reach the end of their shelf life. After 12 years, it has to be recertified. In an exchange or dispenser situation, they don't have the qualified personnel to do that recertification. So if you're operating a dispenser, you basically have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, to the person who has that tank. If you're doing exchange, you can just take that customer's tank, give them a full tank, and send them down the road. So whereas you lose business on the dispenser side with an expired tank, it doesn't have any impact on your business when you're doing it with exchange. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. If you look at the national landscape of propane exchange companies, pretty much anyone who uses gas for barbecue is familiar with the Blue Rhino name. Blue Rhino was a partnership born in 1992. We were actually one of the original partners in Blue Rhino, and it's now owned by Ferrogas, which is a national company. Blue Rhino serves companies like Lowe's, Safeway, Osh Hardware. That is the big national company in the propane exchange business. In addition to that, another big one is AmeriGas's PPX exchange. With AmeriGas's business, they offer the same basic process. The only difference is that when you're talking about AmeriGas and PPX, they have a different set of accounts, so they're serving companies like Home Depot. And then when you look at us, Pickup Propane is our brand. We do this in the western United States, currently in California, Nevada, and Arizona. Most of our accounts are either regional accounts where you may have an owner who has a collection of Ace Hardware stores, or an owner has a collection of gas stations, in addition to independent retail stores. We all do basically the same thing. The important thing is that Pickup Propane is going to be our mechanism that allows us to take these 1-pound refillable cylinders into the marketplace and put it in over 3,000 stores around California. It's our hope, as a part of participating in this project, that all of the companies that do propane tank exchange will ultimately decide that it makes good business sense and that it's the environmentally responsible decision to offer 1-pound propane tank exchange, just as they currently do the 20-pound version, which is the barbecue tank. So let's look at the next slide. So I want to talk really quickly about the National Fire Protection Association. The National Fire Protection Association is the organization that collaborates for the sake of establishing all of the different fire codes that relate to everything from propane gas to natural gas to electricity to hazardous chemicals. It doesn't make a difference. In this case, we're going to talk about NFPA 58. NFPA 58 is the umbrella of regulations related to the storage and handling of liquid propane, and everything that we do is subject to and in compliance with NFPA 58. Let's jump to the next slide. First thing that is a big part of the 1 pound refillable marketplace, and that's the section of NFPA 58 that speaks to the qualification of the personnel who transfer liquid gas. So the important thing is that you can't transfer propane from one cylinder to another without being trained by somebody who's authorized to provide the training and having that training documented. You can find videos on YouTube that show how to do this. You can find people instructing other people on how to do this. But the reality of it is that in order to be in compliance with NFPA 58, not only does the trainer have to be qualified to provide the training, but the training has to be documented. That's really important in this situation because one of the things that's coming up about the 1 pound refillable cylinder is retailers want to know whether they can refill the cylinder themselves, and the answer is yes, if they're properly trained. But you also have a significant portion of the market where these are people who are very interested in finding out whether they can provide their own refill service to their 1 pound tank, because they see that as being the convenient and economical way to do this. The answer to that, from our perspective, is absolutely not. We don't want people doing it because it's dangerous. We don't want people doing it because they probably will not do it in a way that's consistent with the expectations of safety to be in compliance with NFPA 58. And we also don't want them doing it because this is the very beginning of the market history of the refillable 1 pound cylinder. And it would be a very bad thing for our environment and for the potential of this refillable cylinder if one of the first things that happens is somebody goes out and hurts themselves. It could be a serious injury. It could be an injury it could be an accident that includes fatality. We don't want that to happen. The easiest way to make sure it doesn't happen is to make sure that people who are transferring the gas into that 1 pound refillable cylinder are people who've been properly trained. So let's jump to the next slide. So the really important thing for people to realize about how this process works is that not only is it involved training on how to properly move the gas in its liquid form from one cylinder to another, but NFPA 58 training requirements actually also require that the person who receives the training receives training on the appropriate emergency response procedures that could be necessary in the event of a problem in the process of transferring the gas. So this is not just about learning how to move gas from one cylinder to another. It's also about learning how to be ready in the event something happens and what you do when it happens. So it's really important for people to understand that as much as it might be profitable to desire the opportunity to transfer the gas from one cylinder to another, we only want that to be done by qualified personnel, and we only want that done by people who really understand the responsibility that's attached to it. Let's jump to the last slide. Speaking to the subject of disposable cylinders, the Department of Transportation is the governmental entity in the United States that has the responsibility for approving the manufacturing, design, and standards of these cylinders because they are going to be used to carry hazardous materials on public roadways. The DOT has approved the disposable cylinder as a single trip, non-refillable or disposable cylinder, and specifically outlaws or prohibits refilling that cylinder with LP gas. It is not designed to be refilled. It is not safe to be refilled. The economics of this situation clearly point to a refillable cylinder as being a more desirable solution that allows people to use the fuel for whatever purpose they need without there being an environmental consequence in the form of an expensive steel tank that needs to be recycled at a cost that's typically borne by whoever receives it in the supply chain at the end of that cylinder's useful life. In a situation like this, what we want people to realize is that the practical thing to do is to use a refillable cylinder, and the practical thing to do is to choose the exchange model as the safest, most convenient way to get a refillable cylinder into a store and available to the customer, because once it's affordable and convenient for the end user to get their gas in a refillable cylinder, it's much more likely they're going to choose that as the environmentally responsible way of doing it. And actually, I think there's one more slide. I just want to make one quick point on the one-pound cylinders. NFPA 58 allows for the storage and retailing of one-pound cylinders inside of retail stores. And they call this the Walmart exemption because Walmart was the company that first really pushed for the opportunity to put the disposable cylinders on the shelves inside of their stores. What NFPA 58 says about these one-pound cylinders is that they are small enough that they can be safely put on a shelf in a store so that they can be sold the same way stores sell things like lighter fluid for charcoal barbecue grills or other types of hazardous flammable materials like aerosol cans. The reality of it is that the one-pound refillable cylinder can be sold inside of convenience stores, grocery stores, hardware stores, home improvement stores, the same way the disposable container can be sold, and that's what makes it ideal for them to participate in this as an exchange business rather than as a refill business. And I think that's all I have this morning.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you to all our panelists. This concludes the presentation portion of our webinar, and we move on to answering the questions that you've submitted, and Christine Flowers has those.
And Alana, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We have almost everybody is still online as we can see, and we really appreciate that. I'm going to put the questions out to the different speakers. There was a question from Jennifer Silva. What was the company name again that takes the cylinders in California? And I think that might have been directed to Karen or Josh. Karen,
yeah, in Loomis it's called Cylinder Bottle Liquidators, CDL
okay.
Incorporated.
Okay. And then go ahead, Josh.
Pickup propane also. Yeah, pickup propane also. We also do that for a variety of entities, so we do that.
Okay. We have a question from Alex Wyckoff. Are there one-pound cylinders available in Santa Clara County? And yes, Alex, through the project we are pushing in obviously in Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto. So there is at this point at least one retailer in Sunnyvale that is carrying them, and I do know we're working with an Ace Hardware owner who owns 6 Ace Hardwares, 3 of which are in Santa Cruz County, which are all carrying them, and he will probably move those as well to his locations in southern Santa Clara County. So as we know about new locations coming on, we will be putting that information up on our website. Then we have another question from Alex, and I would, no, actually this is from Patty Toes or Toos. If 1-pound cylinders are empty, is it legal in the state of California to devalve and then recycle the tanks with our scrap metal? I'll defer that one to Josh since your company actually does recycling.
We know because the thing about it is that the 1-pound cylinders are not manufactured for the valve to be replaced. So devalving them isn't actually the solution. The way that it's typically done is that they're punctured, because at that point all the gas is released, and then they're actually crushed and recycled that way.
Okay, and let's see. Oh, here we go. Another question. Is there any guidance or contact information available for companies that properly dispose of or recycle the single-use 1-pound cylinders in the East Coast from New Jersey? Renee, we will see what information we can help provide, and I do want to say at this point I can give you an idea of who is on the call. We have several people from the state of New Jersey actually, and just to give you an idea, and we have everyone's contact information. We have 2 cities from New Jersey. We have several agencies from New York and Virginia, Tennessee. So there are people on the East Coast that are looking at this, so maybe we can connect you. Josh, do you have any information that you might be able to share or we could get an answer to this question?
I don't. I can reach out to some people, but I don't at this time.
Okay. All right, do we see any other questions coming in? What should the, oh, here we go. This is a good one, and this is for Josh. This is from Miguel Munoz. What should the weight be of the 1-pound single-use containers once they're empty, to be empty? Josh, would you like to handle that?
The tare weight, which is the empty cylinder weight of one of the Coleman cylinders, is 16.1 ounces. And the DOT standard is that weight actually has to be stamped on the container. So it doesn't make a difference whether it's 1,000 gallons, 20 gallons, or a 1-pound cylinder. The empty cylinder weight has to be stamped on the cylinder.
And then in reference to that, Josh, would you do just a quick recap of how the parks are using the process with the weight to make it cheaper for them to recycle the cylinders?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they actually put the cylinder that's been left in the park on a digital scale, and they weigh it to verify that in fact it has no remaining liquid inside of it. And if it measures out at the tare weight of the cylinder, at that place they put it through their puncturing process.
Okay, and then I would like to mention we've had communication from Bill Preston. He's with the New York State Parks, and he could not get on because of technical difficulties, but he wanted to let people know that they can reach out to him. I can provide his email address. They are working with 2 manufacturers to try to develop a propane, disposable propane recycling option as far as a mechanical option that can be used out at the parks. There is a prototype that had been used and is apparently still being used at Yellowstone National Park. So he's working with 2 of the tank manufacturers to develop something. So I do have his contact information, and if anyone wants it, they can reach out to me, and I will provide it. We have the next question is from Ramesh Sivaransan, and I know I didn't pronounce that correctly, and I'm sorry. Is there a directory or list of refillers, exchangers, and recyclers? We have what we know about, obviously just focused on the grant areas, but is there a collective list in California? Not at this time. If a company is going to be doing this, if they get in touch with us, we can add them in. The Refuel Your Fund campaign is focused in the grant areas, but we certainly would add information into that website. And then the question has come up, I do believe the question about the presentations and is it recorded? We do have it, I do believe it's recorded. Bob, can you confirm that? I'm not
I
sure
am
if you heard me. If we have,
I am recording it, but I usually don't advertise that until I see our quality at the end. So I will
okay.
make that available to Christine, and we can publish it if it looks good to her.
Okay, we will, and this question was related to Melissa Porter was asking about a copy of the webinar and presentations. Obviously, we can make those available, and if it's recorded and we have good quality, we can make that available. And she is asking this question in reference to Girl Scout troops, and we're very excited to get the information to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts because they do so much camping. We would like them to switch to refillables. So is there, at this point, I think I've answered we've answered the questions. Are there any comments? And I'm really excited. We still have a lot of people on the line. So you can continue. I can see the questions as they pop in. Would any of the presenters like to address anything that they forgot to say or any of the questions that we've just answered?
You know, I would just like to really quickly say that there are, to put it in perspective, in California there are hundreds of retailers that offer propane through dispensers, and there are thousands of retailers that resell propane through the exchange method. And so the reality of it is that the infrastructure is or the distribution infrastructure is already in place to move the 1 pound refillable cylinder out into the marketplace. And if I were going to encourage anyone to try and help us make this happen, I would do that by going to the people who currently participate in the exchange business and ask them if they know about 1 pound refillables and encourage them to talk to the company that they do exchange with and ask them to include 1 pound refillables in that exchange business.
This is Christine, and one of the things I would like to add, as we are in the process of communicating directly with the major propane service providers, Camps Pickup Propane is officially part of our Refuel Your Fund campaign. We are in discussions with U-Haul if they formalize, and they've indicated they will formalize a partnership with Refuel Your Fund. We will be putting that information out. So it would be great if you individually follow our Facebook page and check in on our website. And then again, as major retailers come on board, each one, we're promoting the ones that are currently selling the refillables or providing exchange services or refill, and we'll just add them in. Again, we're working at the top levels with the major corporate chains, but it does take a bit of time for them to move along. And we've only really been at this, not even really pushing 6 months, maybe 7 months. So we've actually had a great project moving forward.
Great. I'd just like to thank all of our panelists today and for everyone attending. And this is especially timely as we enter the summer season and think about using less single-use and going refillable.
Yes, and Alana, one other point, there are going to be 4 additional geographic regions that are receiving CalRecycle grants from the previous grant cycle that include the promotion of the refillable propane cylinders. So they will start after July 1st. So we'll be adding in 4 more geographic regions. So if the local governments are in a region that are not part of that, we still welcome them to join the campaign and do what they can, and we'll provide the tools that we're sharing with everyone.
Great.
And we have no more questions coming in via email.
Okay. I'd just like to remind everyone to save the date. Free webinar we'll be hosting in the fall on Sharps. Thursday, October 8th, same time as today, 10 to 11:30 Pacific Standard Time. So thank you all for attending, and have a great day.